Okay guys, all of my heart and soul has gone into this video, and you'll see why at the end. I've done like a billion videos on Spider-Man Far From Home at this stage, and I was thinking about the film just today, and suddenly, I heard those words that I hear before all of my better YouTube efforts. It's big brain time. So sit back, relax, subscribe, we're going to be talking about why Mysterio is the best Spider-Man villain. Mysterio is one of my favorite villains in Marvel history. He's a guy with no superpowers at all, but the power to persuade and deceive. Any power displayed by this guy is literal smoke and mirrors. There's no superhuman strength, heck, he's not even formidable in hand-to-hand combat, but he's able to put up a challenge against Spider-Man by simply being resourceful, and doesn't even really need to lay a finger on him. Pair that up with a god-tier supervillain costume with this wacky 60s sci-fi-esque looking outfit, including a misty fishbowl, and you've got yourself an interesting villain for Spider-Man, a character whose abilities are very physical, being based around strength and agility. Mysterio doesn't challenge his opponent's abilities, he challenges their character, bringing out the strength in their hearts, or in some cases, bringing out a darkness they never knew they had. Mysterio understands how heroes react to the world around them, so he basically places them in a very distorted version of that world, and challenges their perceptions, often causing his opponents to screw themselves over. In Spidey's Rogues Gallery, Mysterio stands out from the crowd as someone who poses no physical threat to Spider-Man, but is capable of making Spider-Man pose a threat to himself and people around him just by presenting Spider-Man with scenarios that will lead him to his undoing. In terms of origins, Mysterio's backstory is pretty basic. Quentin Beck is an underappreciated practical effects artist and stuntman, and one day one of his co-workers is just like, "Yo, wanna try being a criminal?" And I guess Quentin Beck is just like, whatever, and then just goes as hard as he can with it, going out of his way to screw Spidey over any which way he can. Although, I mean, that is one version of it. It's since been expanded upon. Quentin Beck was a stuntman and practical effects artist who wanted a change in his career path for the sake of recognition. He didn't have the looks to be an actor, but he didn't have the patience to be a director, so he figured, hey, Spider-Man gets a lot of glory and recognition, I could be a superhero, but I don't want to play second fiddle to Spider-Man, so Mysterio's story began with him imitating the wall crawler in his first appearance in Amazing Spider-Man 13 to drag Spidey's name through the dirt before stepping in as his Mysterio persona, persuading the public that he would deal with the now universally despised and feared Spider-Man, fooling everybody in New York City that Mysterio was the true superhero and that Spider-Man really is a menace, just like J. Jonah Jameson said. And then, of course, Mysterio died in an issue of Daredevil. Thanks for that, Kevin Smith. It's a dark story though, and really interesting to see Mysterio go so adult. It transpires that Quentin Beck has been diagnosed with inoperable cancer, and at the time of this comic, Mysterio realizes that his sworn enemy was simply a clone of the real Spider-Man. He figures, what's even the point of Spider-Man anymore? I think a lot of us agreed when it came to the Ben Reilly twist. But he went one better, of course. Let's drive Daredevil insane. In a story that involves satanic transformations, unwanted artificial insemination, and Mysterio's suicide. Yikes. Mysterio is not just one person, though. Throughout the ages of the Marvel 616, the fishbowl has been passed down to a few others. Quentin Beck's cousin Maguire Beck would go on to be Mysterio's successor, Mad Jack, after the suicide of Quentin Beck, and she vowed to eliminate all who gave trouble to her predecessor. Mad Jack was very similar to Mysterio even in design, but the fishbowl is replaced with a flaming jack-o'-lantern. Then there's Daniel Burkhart, who was paid by J. Jonah Jameson to trick Spider-Man into believing that he was the ghost of Mysterio, at a time when the real Mysterio had faked his own death. Daniel Burkhart took on the fishbowl full-time after Quentin Beck's actual suicide. We also have Francis Clum, a mutant criminal with the ability to teleport who saved Black Cat from being sexually assaulted by his abusive older brother Garrison. This, of course, led to a misunderstanding with Spider-Man, believing him to be attempting to kill Black Cat. Spider-Man attacked him, causing him to sustain major injuries. Wanting revenge on Spider-Man, Francis Clum purchased all of Mysterio's costume and paraphernalia from Kingpin and set out to defeat Spider-Man once and for all. And finally, we have Mysterion, who, well, we don't know who Mysterion is. He fought the superior Spider-Man and has robot dinosaurs, so I guess that's pretty cool. He kind of filled in for Quentin Beck while Quentin Beck was trapped in the Ultimate Universe. Speaking of which, there is of course the Ultimate Universe, which provided a unique B-side to Marvel Comics, and characters like Spider-Man complete with reimagined villains. Mysterio was one of them, although it must be said he didn't exactly receive a whole lot of love in his Ultimate incarnation, as there really isn't much to this rendition of Mysterio. He deals more with hallucinogens and toxins, so he's a lot more like Scarecrow from Batman. As well as that, his redesign is a drastic departure from his classic look, now sporting a black suit with a neck brace that engulfs his head in white fire, as opposed to the classic fishbowl. And obviously, I do have a problem with that. Mysterio without a fishbowl on his head? You must be joking. An interesting development came in the Spider-Men story arc, which saw 616 Peter Parker entering the Ultimate Spider-Man universe and crossing over with Miles Morales. The Mysterio of the Ultimate Universe transpired to be an android controlled by Mysterio from the 616 universe. Did you know that at the start of the Old Man Logan story arc in Marvel Comics, it was Mysterio that fooled Wolverine into killing the other X-Men? Mysterio has seen a number of on-screen adaptations throughout the ages in different Spider-Man media, including cartoons and video games, perhaps most notably his appearance in the Spider-Man 2 video game, where Quentin Beck lost a sporting event to Spider-Man, so to deal with the humiliation he decided to stage an alien invasion with Mysterio being the leader of it. Mysterio was of course subject to ridicule by other characters in the game, with Spider-Man not even taking him remotely seriously. As well as that, Mysterio was sporting a redesign which retained his iconic fishbowl and green and purple color scheme, but dialed it up to 100 on how hammy the whole thing looked. While this was only a mid-2000s video game appearance, Mysterio did showcase some cinematic potential here, being as this video game took place in the universe of the Sam Raimi Spider-Man films. Mysterio would also go on to be the main antagonist of Spider-Man Shattered Dimensions, with him stealing an ancient tablet allowing him to transform his illusions into a reality. So, with a Spider-Man villain with such a rich history, who's been shown a lot of love in Spider-Man multimedia, where the heck was Mysterio's big screen appearance over all these years? Well, fun fact, Mysterio was set to make an appearance in Sam Raimi's originally proposed Spider-Man 4. However, Mysterio was not set to play a major role, but instead supposed to be part of a montage of Spider-Man taking down different villains that Sam Raimi had no intention of focusing on in any future movie. Damn. In the brief appearance, we would have seen Spider-Man apprehending Mysterio and bringing him into the police force, as they all laugh at Quentin Beck as portrayed by Bruce Campbell, marking Bruce Campbell's fourth appearance in the Spider-Man film series. Presumably, Mysterio would have kept his classic look if the storyboards were anything to go by. Of course, this wasn't meant to be, as there was no Spider-Man 4. 2 reboots later and an animated film, still no Mysterio until 2019's sequel to Spider-Man Homecoming, Spider-Man Far From Home. So in terms of an adaptation of Mysterio, what did Spider-Man Far From Home have to offer us? Well, we need to begin by setting the scene. To have a story involving Quentin Beck opting to take down Spider-Man in particular because he wants to be the #1 hero and gain recognition above all others, well, it's going to need a little retooling. Spider-Man comics in the early Steve Ditko years were relatively self-contained and only crossed over with other heroes occasionally. In the case of Spider-Man and the Marvel Cinematic Universe, this Spider-Man came out during the twilight years of Iron Man, Captain America, and the Avengers. Spider-Man worked pretty closely alongside Iron Man in his early tenure as a superhero in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, so naturally when Iron Man sacrificed himself to save the universe from the gauntlet of Thanos, see what I did there, and all of the other more experienced superheroes seemingly disappeared, it left 16-year-old Peter Parker thinking, oh Jesus Christ, I hope I don't find myself in that situation. I'm super young, inexperienced, I have no GF, I'm not a millionaire, I haven't lived yet, I don't want to be the next Iron Man, I'm not some soldier ready to die in battle, again, I'm just a teenager from Queens. Ah well, Thanos is gone, I'm going on vacation, everything's good, everything's alright. Well, too bad for Peter, just as he arrives in Venice, Hydra Man attacks, dealing a great deal of damage. Now, surely this can't be happening. He didn't bring his costume for a good reason. This is his vacation. Europe's never had a Spider-Man, why would they need one now? But It's all good. There's a new guy that can fly and shoot lasers out of his hands, and he dresses kinda like Thor. He kinda reminds everyone of Iron Man as well, complete with a swishy cape and armor on his chest. Mysterio seems to take down Hydra Man swiftly, and takes a moment to bask in the applause from the locals before swooping off. So okay, alright, everything's fine. There's still an experienced high-profile superhero out there, so Peter can continue to stay close to the ground and remain a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man like Tony Stark advised him to. This is until he's drafted into battle by Nick Fury, who strong-arms Peter into suiting up as his own European bootleg of Spider-Man, Night Monkey, using Tony Stark's final gift to Peter as leverage. Emotional manipulation. Nice one, Nick Fury. Or should I say Talos? But that's not what this video is about. Tony Stark's final gift to Peter is the Edith glasses, a small bit of technology that packs a big punch, as it has the ability to summon an army of Stark drones, all in the name of the next Iron Man. But Peter knows deep down that he is not the next Iron Man. Mysterio is the next Iron Man, upon getting to know him, and he hands the glasses over to Mysterio. For dramatic effect, it's worth noting that Quentin bears a striking resemblance to Tony Stark while wearing the glasses. And it all transpires that this was, of course, a ploy so that Mysterio could gain access to the Edith glasses and use the army of drones to manipulate perception on a far grander scale than his own gadgets ever could. Hydra Man, Sandman, and Molten Man, why stop there? He wants to take down an Avengers-level threat. And it's here we learn of the origins of Quentin Beck. Quentin Beck originally worked for Stark Industries developing the technology that we saw Tony using at the lecture in Captain America Civil War, where Tony was able to simulate his childhood. But Quentin Beck was furious with how little recognition Tony gave him for his invention, and worse yet, Tony named his invention Barf. It doesn't stop there though. Tony Stark would go on to fire Quentin Beck over concerns about his mental health, no longer allowing access or credit for Quentin Beck to any of his inventions. So I'm not just going to go through the plot here, I'm going to draw up some parallels between the Mysterio of the classic 616 comic books and the Mysterio of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Mysterio in the comic books felt frustrated with his lack of recognition as a stuntman and practical effects artist, so he decided to use his resources to manufacture a superhero for fame and glory. Mysterio in the Marvel Cinematic Universe was frustrated with his lack of recognition as an inventor for Stark Industries, and worse yet, was fired, so he gathered together a cult of estranged Stark employees to work together and manufacture their own superhero for fame and glory. In many ways, this is faithful to the source material, the key difference being that, rather than working in the film industry, Quentin Beck instead worked for Stark Industries, which is basically just a different means to the same end. But then there's the plan. Rather than attempting to take Spider-Man's place by imitating him, committing crimes to gain the favor of New York like in the classic comic book, Marvel Cinematic Universe Mysterio instead decides to step up after the death of Iron Man and the disbanding of the Avengers to take his place in the spotlight. From the ashes of the Avengers rises Mysterio. This is Mysterio's key objective: manufacture a superhero, but rather than fight against Spider-Man, he fights against monsters that he also manufactured, as the elementals are completely his own creation. Because of this, he doesn't just gain the trust of the public, he gains the trust of Spider-Man and S.H.I.E.L.D., and because those are key protagonists in this film, it gains the trust of the audience, or at least those that don't know any better. The problem is, while Mysterio's elementals are fake, the casualties caused by the technology operating them very much aren't, with Mysterio's Sandman illusion in Mexico wiping out an entire village. Mysterio is endangering lives so that he can pretend to save them. This is a stark contrast to Iron Man. Get it? Stark contrast? Shut up. In Tony Stark's early days in the MCU, he was a weapons dealer, claiming that his weapons could lead to world peace. As a weapons manufacturer, he was effectively pretending to save the world until he learned that his weapons were being used for evil intent and endangering innocent lives, so he opted to suit up as Iron Man so he could start saving the world for real. Having Mysterio arrive on scene after Iron Man's death gives Mysterio a sense of greater thematic weight in the MCU, perhaps even more so than Thanos, in spite of Thanos' event-level status and fantastic development. As well as this, we get some contrast between Spider-Man and Mysterio. Spider-Man wonders, how can I be the next Iron Man, believing himself to not be good enough, where Mysterio gleefully steals the mantle of the greatest superhero of all time, not caring whether or not he's earned it. Better yet, when Spider-Man realizes his mistake, he steps up and takes responsibility by stopping at nothing to defeat Mysterio and save his friends. When Mysterio realizes that Peter has uncovered his plans though, he too takes matters into his own hands, by viciously setting out to kill Peter and all of his friends, which once again stays faithful to Mysterio's roots in the comic books, as he's always been one of Spider-Man's more vicious adversaries. I dare to say that Mysterio, if anything, comes the closest to actually killing Spidey out of many of Spidey's own rogues gallery on screen, by using his illusions to back Spidey onto the railroad tracks and then smack. Then when it transpires that Spidey survived and has put an end to this manufactured Avengers level threat in London, Mysterio decides, screw it, I'm just gonna use the drones to pump Spidey, his friends, and half the population of London full of lead. It's all good, got a contingency plan. Spidey of course takes Mysterio down, and Mysterio seemingly dies after being shot at by one of his drones, but Mysterio isn't done yet. While it does seem as though he's dead and done with, it transpires that he was filming the entire time and has manipulated the footage to appear as though Spider-Man ordered the drones to attack London and has sold this footage to J. Jonah Jameson. So, in The Amazing Spider-Man 13, Mysterio joins forces with J. Jonah Jameson, helping him to run a smear campaign against Spidey, promising Jameson that he'll take down Spider-Man himself as New York's greatest hero of all time. In Spider-Man Far From Home, effectively Mysterio and Jameson do join forces to run a smear campaign about Spider-Man turning the whole city against him. But things get worse yet. In this universe, Mysterio knows Spider-Man's secret identity, just like every other villain Spider-Man's ever fought in films, to be honest, thanks to winning the trust of S.H.I.E.L.D. and unveil Spidey's secret identity to the world, after now accusing him of murder and filming himself trying to thwart Spidey's evil plans. Once again, we have something of a stark contrast here. After the events of the first Iron Man film, Tony Stark is effectively born again, a hero, and one of the first things he does is reveal his secret identity to the world. In Spider-Man Far From Home, Mysterio's final act as a perceived hero is to reveal Spider-Man's identity, which will likely lead to Spider-Man having to deal with the repercussions of this in a way that Tony Stark didn't really have to. Why is this so terrifying? Well, let's go back to a scene where Peter Parker and Happy Hogan are on Tony's jet, where we reach the resolution of Peter's arc regarding being the next Iron Man. It transpires that he doesn't need to be the next Iron Man. Spider-Man can save the world, as simply Spider-Man. And in the final battle of Spider-Man Far From Home, we effectively see Spider-Man acting as a one-man Avengers team. But a big point that this film makes is that Spider-Man is not Iron Man. He's not rich, this isn't business for him, he's inexperienced and insecure about himself, he's not confident, he doesn't have the backing of his own company, and he doesn't have limitless resources. His secret identity is important to him. For Mysterio to have revealed this in such a way could see the lower class Peter Parker in far more trouble than Iron Man ever had to see for it, rendering Mysterio probably the most magnificent foe Spidey's ever faced in film. But it all stays true to who Mysterio has always been. In terms of his look and appearance in Spider-Man Far From Home, they stayed very true to the source material in terms of the overall look. He's got the green jumpsuit, a big purple cape, and the eyeball motifs on the clasps, and of course that all-important fishbowl. A new addition to Mysterio's look is armor around his torso and chest, which resembles Asgardian armor, and it's hinted that this is the inspiration for it during the end credits. The whole point of Spider-Man Far From Home is the distinction between a real superhero and a fraud. Iron Man was a superhero. Spider-Man is not confident about himself being a superhero, but he realizes that he has to be a superhero himself when faced against someone who's confident in themselves being a superhero, but really is the furthest thing from it and is in it for completely the wrong reasons. As far as Spider-Man film villains and comic book villains go, Mysterio is going to be a tough one to top, and personally, I feel like they did an absolutely flawless job with this character in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. For a relatively B-list Spider-Man character, he shares so much in common with his classic comic book counterpart that, honestly, I feel kinda privileged that my favorite villain was given such a faithful treatment. But here's the thing. I've talked about Mysterio several times in the past, and the film has been out on Blu-ray for some time now. Why was it now that I decided to do a video essay on why Mysterio is the best Spider-Man villain? Well, growing up, it was my father who got me into superheroes. He wanted to be a comic book artist when he was growing up, and when I was very young, he was pleased when I came to him and told him that my favorite Spider-Man villain was Mysterio, because it turned out Mysterio was his favorite Spider-Man villain too. He loved the Twilight Zone influence on the character and was a huge fan of Steve Ditko. And what got me thinking about this so much is on this day 3 years ago, on the 5th of November 2016, my father was diagnosed with a brain tumor, and things would never be the same again, and he passed away a little over a month later. And for me, Spider-Man Far From Home is not just an amazing film, but it has an almost therapeutic effect on me. When I see that mid-movie battle where Mysterio has Spider-Man trapped in his illusion in Berlin, and I'm seeing how thrilling and horrifying that sequence is, I'm also feeling comfort. Marvel Studios did Mysterio flawlessly and treated the character with a bucket load of respect. And I feel like by doing right by the character, they weren't just doing right by Mysterio, they weren't just doing right by Stan Lee and Steve Ditko, they weren't just doing right by me, but they did right by my father. And that means the world to me. Which is part of the reason why Spider-Man Far From Home might just be one of my favorite films I've ever seen, and why it and its version of Mysterio are so dang special to me. And with that, I dedicate this video, like I dedicate my entire channel, to the people I love. And this one is dedicated to my dad. So Mysterio, what do you think? Comment below and discuss who is your favorite Spider-Man villain. And as always, if you enjoyed this video and you want to see more like it, don't forget to hit subscribe, hit the like button, and in description below are links to my Patreon. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Have a great day and stay tuned for some special offers. Oh, hey gang, look at this. Channel Goat is back. But he's got bad news. His computer was hacked by the Adzinko gang, and they leaked his private information. And now his goat cojones are there for everybody to see. Ah man, that's quite a predicament you got there, Channel Goat. And the thing is, you're not the only one. Do you know how many people get hacked per year and have their personal information and data spread online for all to see? A lot. Like, look it up. And I know what the rest of you are thinking. It hasn't happened to me, yet. Well, emphasis on yet. I mean, how old are you? Right, now how long is the average human lifespan? That's a lot of time that you could get hacked in. And by the time that's done, everybody is gonna know what your pee-pee looks like. Do you really want that? Do you really want the world to see your pee-pee? You run that risk every single day, guys. Seriously, hackers, pretty talented people. Which is why I, for one, use NordVPN to protect my private information and my Nords. It shuffles your data so that it can't be found by hackers, but not only that, it can also unlock the worldwide range of Netflix. And like, who wouldn't want that, right? Now you can really maximize your subscription. The fact is, guys, you could save yourself the stress and a lawsuit by simply browsing with NordVPN. And I've made it easy for you. A link is in the description below. And this subscription comes with a promise. Nobody has to know what you're into anymore. You little furry you. Anyway, sign up today. Seriously, do it. Please? For your sweet little puppy? This video is brought to you by Zentai for all your cosplay needs. Link is in the description below and they are very cool and good. Cosplay your favorite characters or send in one of your own designs. Affordable prices and very high quality. Made to order and made to measure. But most of all, made to be heckin' awesome. If you couldn't already tell. Guys, can you believe where we are now and where we started? How long ago it was that Channel Pup or Channel Goat even came about? Because it really wasn't that long when you think about it. Can you believe the amount of support I've received from this community, from all of you subscribing to the channel and everything? It's unreal. It's a dream come true for me. But behind the YouTubers you watch usually comes a bit of a truth, is that they're often dirt poor. Now, I've had the good fortune of being able to grow this YouTube channel and hopefully turn it into a career, but I'm gonna need a little bit of help along the way, to even the odds to make ends meet, so that I can use all of the possible time that I have to make videos for you guys, as opposed to doing something mundane, for barely enough money to make it worth its while. I've done all that. I've lived that life. The fact is, together we all built Channel Pup. We made it what it is today, and I want to keep the ball rolling on that. I don't ever want to stop doing this, because this is the most gratifying job I've ever had, and I think the most pleasurable hobby anyone could ever have. I don't take any of the support that I receive from you guys for granted, but if in any way you're wondering if maybe you could do a little more for the channel even, then I want to direct you to the Patreon link in the description below. It would mean the world to me to have your support via Patreon. It can help me to make ends meet, it can help me to better my content, it can help me to have more time to really work on this stuff. But you know what, I'm not just going to take your support and run. No way, Jose. In the Patreon, you can access exclusive videos via the Pups Project Room playlist, where you can see different projects that I've been working on or have worked on that have either not made it to YouTube for general viewing or have been cancelled, or, well, you can get a little view of the process that goes behind the Channel Pup videos and productions. As well as that, you tend to get advanced previews of the bigger Channel Pup projects, our tentpole event projects. If you've seen Marvelous Tales of Spider-Man, you'll be aware that that was released on the Patreon first, and 20 days later approximately was released for general viewing on YouTube. That's not the only time I'm gonna do this. But you know what? If you can't do the Patreon, or are just not interested in doing the Patreon, I fully understand. Like, it's still a big ask in my opinion. And what counts most is your support. So, as always, thank you so much, guys. I've been Channel Pup, and I will think of a better catchphrase next time. Now please leave me alone!